dudes, this is Barbie Wild, the female Cenobite in Hellbound Hellraiser 2, and you're listening to Tommy Throwback Kovac on Splat from the Past. And if he doesn't have me on again, I'm gonna tear his soul apart.
Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today, I will be having my second interview from Klowns From Outer Space. This time, a stuntman. His name is Mike Martinez. He was the stunt clown for the really scary looking clown in the movie. The one who does all the really mean-spirited stuff, like he rams the guy off the road, and he does the shadow puppets and what have you. And I'm having him on the show today to talk about talk about being a stuntman on Terminator 2, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, the remake of Village of the Damned, Willow, so many great movies that he worked on, and also talk about stuff he's working on now, for that matter. And it's going to be pretty cool. So yeah, here is my interview with Mike Martinez. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Tommy. How's it going?
It's going great. How are you, sir?
I'm good, thanks.
Well, it's such an honor. Thank you for taking the time today. This is great.
Oh, no worries.
So, going back in time, did you have an interest early on in stunts and acting and stuff like that?
Actually, what happened was when I was a kid, and I first found out what a stunt person was, I may have been around 5, 6 years old, I don't know. It didn't make sense to me, because I couldn't understand how come these people could do this stuff and these people couldn't, and I'm kind of nosy by nature, and so I was curious. So anytime there was something on television talking about stunts and things like that, I always watched it. Now, back then, it wasn't like it is now. I mean, there were certain shows, like one called You Asked For It, and they showed guys doing some kind of daredevil thing or stuff. And so I just kind of watched those things and just kind of left it at that. Then fast forward, I was working as a warehouseman, and we were doing that thing at lunch. What would you do if you weren't doing this? Like if you had a dream job. And some guys wanted to play baseball. One guy wanted to be a merchant marine. And they got to me, and I said I'd be a stunt guy. And that's the first time I ever said it out loud to myself, that's what I wanted to do. And at the time, I was about 23 years old, something like that. And I thought, well, I'm young. I was always a jock in school. And so I thought I'm still in shape, so I'll check it out, find out what it would take.
Wow. Did you play football?
Yeah, I was playing football, was on the track team in baseball. I was a catcher. So, I was basically just one of the jocks.
Yeah, I did all that stuff too when I was in high school. I didn't have much of an interest in it. I was just trying to get girls. Yeah. Where are you from originally?
I grew up I was born in Southern California, but my parents moved to Northern California, and so I grew up in Oakland, across San Francisco. Yeah.
Oh, I'm from San Mateo.
Oh, really? Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. Now, according to my research, and we all know how inaccurate IMDb can be, but it says on there that you were the voice of Tito on the Jackson 5 cartoon.
There's another guy named Michael Martinez, and he and I have actually been in touch. He's the one who did it, and I've tried taking that off of my IMDb, but I, haven't had any luck. So it's kind of a joke, the other guy, Michael Martinez, he when he first contacted me, he says, I'm the other guy who did the voice for Tito.
Oh, man. Because I was going to say, I mean, after doing voiceover work, you're like, screw this, I'm just going to go into stunts.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I kind of I started out looking to be a stunt guy, and it worked out. I did it part-time while I still worked as a warehouseman, and then I ended up going full-time when I took a leave of absence from my job to work on Killer Klowns from Outer Space.
Right.
And so when I did that, the guy who was the assistant director was going to be the production manager of another movie, and so I got offered a chance to work on that, and so basically I just never went back to my day job. Killer Klowns was kind of like my landmark film.
Yeah. Do you know Bob Elmore?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Yeah, he played Leatherface in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. He has a similar story. He went from his day job straight to stunts, and he never went back to his day job either.
Yeah, right. It just happened to have after Killer Klowns, and I was at that point where I was thinking, okay, if I put my full time into doing this and into looking for work, could I make a living out of it? And so I had heard that it takes about 8 years to kind of establish yourself to where you can make a living, and that's right about how long it was. I worked part-time for about 8 years, and then that's when I was able to make my move.
Yeah, from the time that you decided you were going to do it till actually doing it, it took 8 years?
Yeah, to where I felt confident enough to quit my day job, because I had a young family. I was married and had a couple of kids, so I was reluctant to leave my day job,
Mm-hmm. Wow. And did you have to go through the whole process with the Screen Actors Guild and all that stuff?
Yeah, I've been, I had joined SAG well before Killer Klowns. I think I joined SAG around 1975 or 1976, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, and we shot Killer Klowns in 87.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to mention the names of movies you worked on. Tell me anything you remember about working on them.
Okay.
Massive Retaliation.
That's the movie that got me my SAG card. I doubled, and one of the actors, Michael Pritchard.
Oh yeah, I know Michael.
I got blown up for him.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, it was also Bobcat's first movie too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I ended up doubling Mike again in a movie where I doubled him and I doubled Eric Estrada in a movie called Light Glass.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And did you move to L.A.?
No, I always worked in the Bay Area. It just happened that at the time there was more going on in the Bay Area. They had some TV shows, a TV show called Wolf, and then Industrial Light and Magic had the effects the shop in Marin. So I got work with them on shows like Willow and Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I did a bunch of work for ILM at the time.
Nice. I didn't realize you did Who Framed Roger Rabbit. That's cool.
Yeah.
So how did Killer Klowns come about?
Well, we got a call from the Kyotos about doing the show because they were going to shoot it in Santa Cruz, and so we were the closest local stunt people, and so we got a call, and then the stunt coordinator Rocky Capella and I drove to LA went to their studio to look at the costumes to see if we'd be able to perform the stunts in them. And so I went, and they put me in one of the costumes. At the time, they were just, I think they were just white masks and gloves and things like that. They didn't have any of the makeup or anything. And they put me in the thing with the big shoes and all that. And so we did some moving around just to see how it would be the best way to move in the costumes because of the size of the costumes and the size of the heads and the limitation of being able to see out of the costumes. Mm-hmm. And so we went through all that, got that done, and nobody knew that they wanted someone to put the shoes on, so they just quickly glued the soles to the shoes and ended up gluing the shoes to my socks. So they were nice enough to give me another pair of socks so I could go home.
Was it really hot in that suit?
Yeah, they were. They were really hot, and sometimes the suits weren't really padded. They were just kind of held by bands, kind of like the kind of things that corsets are made out of, just to let them balloon out. And some of the costumes were padded, but the thing that made them mostly hot was the fact that the masks covered your head and everything, so you'd be sweating like crazy under the mask. And some of the masks had motors in the head to make the eyes blink or look side to side and things like that. So you're going along and you hear the sound like, going around in your head while you're doing stuff.
Yeah.
But because I was the one who did the floating clown thing when the clown is floating next to the car and rams against the guy and knocks him off the cliff.
Yeah, that really scary, mean-spirited clown.
Yeah, right. And it had limited views. It was a really cool contraption that the special effects guy made that was connected to the side of the car, and it had an arm that was able to pivot out. It had a wheel on the front of it, and the switches it had a track that one of the switches that was connected to my wrist, I would move my hand, and it had a track that I would move up and back, and then the other one is how I steered the wheel on the front of the thing. So when I pulled next to the guy, I just rolled up next to the window, and then when he made like he was speeding up, I backed up as if he was getting away from me, and then I moved back. Mm-hmm. Then I started steering and smashing into the car.
Oh, man.
We ended up having to shoot that over a couple of nights because something happened to the footage, and so they had to do some pickup shots because they didn't actually get the shot they wanted, and they really wanted to try and put that in the movie because that was the thing that started the whole idea of the movie. I think it was Steve Chiodo and Charlie Chiodo were in their car. It was in the morning, and they stopped at a light, and then some clown just pulls up next to them in the car, and they look over at him, and he looked at them. The light turned green. He gave a couple of beeps to his horn, waved, and took off. Mm-hmm. And they were just kind of laughing about that, and then their brains kind of kicked in about clown, and maybe he's a murderer, and then he's a killer clown. Yeah, he's a killer clown from outer space, and that's how the whole thing started.
And didn't that
they really wanted that in the movie,
Yeah, and didn't that clown and all the clowns in general just have nicknames on the set?
Yeah, the one at the time. The one that did the smashing into the car. They just called him Bozo. I think now they call him Slim? No.
Slim.
I think they call him Slim now. I can't remember. But at the time, yeah, they called, there was a big fat clown. They called him Bubbles. And I can't, they all just had nicknames. And at some point in time, I was in all of the costumes. Mostly me and this guy, Herod Blank, were the clowns most of the time. Herod is about 6'2", and they wanted the clowns to be big.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was kind of basically the stunt bozo,
Yeah.
I got hit by the SUV when they were running away from the tent, once getting shot with the popcorn guns and just different things. I just did stunts for a lot of the clowns.
Did you do stunts for the short clown?
No, he actually didn't have to. He actually didn't have any real stunts, other than his fight scene with the biker. But that was just him kind of playing around, you know. But then the most dangerous part is for him was when all the bikes took off, because the guys on the motorcycle, they have real bikers, so they were excited to be able to just start up their bikes and peel out,
Yeah.
But we gave everybody a pass to go, and so the guy who played the small clown, Gino, he was safe.
Yeah, and that's actually Suzanne Snyder's favorite clown is the short clown.
Yeah,
Yeah. Are you the one who lifted her up and then turned her into the balloon?
That was actually done with a dummy. It was on a framework because they had her on. We put her on a teeter-totter. Mm-hmm. So we just pushed down on one end, and then that's how they had attached the hands to her arms. And then, as she went up, the hands, the arms went up with her. We thought that'd be easier to make it look like he was just grabbing her by her hands, because if she got picked up like that, it would actually hurt. So she was on a teeter-totter. So basically, I was one pushing on the teeter-totter, so I guess I was the one who lifted her.
Yeah. Did it take a couple of nights to film the Clownzilla sequence at the end?
I wasn't there. Charlie Kyoto was the guy who was inside the Clownzilla. He's the one who did that, and he was also the one who puppeted the marionette clown. And so he wanted to play the clown, and so they kind of made the costume to fit him, because he kind of knew what movement he was going to do with the puppet and how to. That way, he was able to match the movement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This has been one of my favorite cult movies for 30 years now. Since I was 6 years old, my dad and I, we still watch it and laugh at that movie to this day.
Yeah, it's funny. People ask me about films. People meet me, they find out I was a stunt person, they say, have you been in any movies? And so anytime someone asks you, what movies have you been in, we always go blank. You kind of go, I don't know, but I've done, I did, like I said, Indiana Jones at the Last Crusade. I was in Terminator 2. I was in Jurassic World and San Andreas. And then as soon as I mention Killer Klowns From Outer Space, that's always the movie that gets the biggest reaction. It's so funny. I did that so long ago. And, now I even get asked to go to the horror conventions once in a while to meet people and sign pictures and stuff. It's just weird. It was just this movie I did a long time ago, and it just became this weird cult following,
Yeah. It's a timeless classic for sure.
Right.
Then you did Willow.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so funny. I was at the one of the horror conventions in Philadelphia, and a gal came up and we talked and everything, and I gave her one of the pictures of the night that I got a picture the night that we were doing the floating clown thing, and so I gave she got one of those pictures, and they made a banner for Heron and I so they could show different things, and on the banner they put a picture from Willow, and apparently that's always been one of her favorite films, and she looked and she was kind of sitting there like cringing, and she said, I didn't know you did Willow, and I said, well, I was Rick Overton's stunt double for one of the little brownie characters, and so, you know, she got that picture. I just gave her that picture, you know, as a present because she was, you know, she was so happy about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. Ron Howard, good to work with?
Ron Howard is the nicest guy you would ever want to meet. I worked with him on Willow, and then I did Ed TV that he directed, and so there's been people who have tried to find dirt on Ron Howard, and apparently they've never been able to. You know, everybody who works with him just loves the guy.
Yeah. It's Opie.
You know, yeah, and it's funny, you know, because I actually use him as an example a lot of times, because sometimes I get directors kind of think they know how they want the stunts performed, and so they imagine how it's going to be done, and they prepare to have it done a certain way, but the way they do it isn't the way they want to shoot it isn't safe, and you know, we kind of have to be the bearer of bad news. And Ron, when we did Willow, all the little things that the little brownies had to do, we did it all at Industrial Light and Magic against the old blue screen that they had, and because they were all effect shots. Mm-hmm. And so he took us to the storyboards, and anytime we were going to do a scene, we looked at the storyboards. He said what was going to happen, what it was going to look like, and then he'd say, so what do you think? How can it be done? And so we come up, well, we could do it this way, and it works and will look like this, or we can do it that way, and it works like this and will look like that. And we gave him about 3 options, and he would think about it, and he said, I think the second one. You know, we explained it to him, and he kind of just let us do our job. You know, you guys know what you're doing, so, you know, tell me how it can be done, you know. Mm-hmm. And some of the things were just as simple as me being on a trampoline and doing some stuff, you know. But he was a great guy to work with.
Oh, that's good.
And a great storyteller. He was always telling stories during lunchtime.
Oh, yeah.
It was a small crew because it was just my buddy Rocky and I as the stunt doubles, and then whatever crew was there. So, you know, lunch was, you know, about 10 or 12 people, and so he was always there telling stories. It was really funny.
Nice. What did you do on Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
I mostly worked safety on that. We did, again, it was at ILM, and we did the effects stuff with Bob Hoskins when he was in Toontown. Mm-hmm. And so the fascinating part is there was a cartoonist from Disney. And so sometimes we had to have Bob Hoskins on wires or different ways of him working with nothing there. It was always just blue screen, and even the floor was mirrored. So the whole thing was just blue. And so we would ask the cartoonist, well, we would ask the director what kind of action do they want here? And he's like, well, I don't know. And so we go to the cartoonist, and the cartoonist really quick just sketched out the action on a big pad, and moving the pages like a cartoon, so it had movement, and he would show what the cartoon character was going to look like when the woman, when Bob Hoskins was falling, and this lady catches him and then kisses him on the cheek. She kind of catches him and then cradles him and everything, so we had to do that all on wires, and so we wanted to see what her movement would be so we can make his movement kind of match what they were looking for. And it was fascinating just watching the cartoonist whip out about 7-10 pages and make the cartoon happen, right there.
Mm-hmm.
It was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, that movie was so groundbreaking. I don't think you'll ever see all those cartoon characters in the same movie ever again.
Right, yeah.
It's amazing.
And it was interesting watching it be done like a cartoon instead of with computer graphics like they do now.
Right.
It was really it really had a different look to it back then.
Mm-hmm. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
I doubled Harrison Ford on a couple of scenes. One of them driving the sidecar, and one when he had to spell Jehovah on the floor, and he falls through the floor and catches himself.
Yeah.
I doubled him for that. Falling through the floor, and I used wrist straps to hang onto a pipe. So when I broke through the floor, that's what caught me. And then I pulled myself up. Well, I was able to pull myself up for about the first 2 or 3 times. But after the impact, I couldn't pull myself up anymore because I ended up having to do it about a dozen times. My arms were just exhausted at the end of it. but yeah, so I only worked a couple of scenes on that one at Industrial Light and Magic and on Treasure Island, driving the sidecar.
Mm-hmm. Terminator 2.
I was one of the police officers and the SWAT officers when they went to Cyberdyne Systems to when Arnold shot up all the police cars and everything, and when they blew the SWAT goes in, and then they blew the whole thing up. It was just that scene. We filmed it over the course of a couple of weeks, and that was shot in Fremont, out here in Northern California, and as it happened, I was living in Fremont, so I was only about a couple of miles from work that time. That was nice.
Nice. How about the remake of Village of the Damned?
I was I was a officer on that. There was a big convoy where we had to drive in and slide the cars to a stop, and get out, and a big shootout thing. I only did a couple of days on that show.
Mm-hmm. I think that was Christopher Reeve's last movie before his accident.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was directed by John Carpenter, and I ended up meeting John again at one of the horror things in Philadelphia. I dropped by where he was, and dropped by and said hi to him. Nice guy.
Yeah, I mean, that guy to me, when I was growing up, him and George Romero were like my two horror auteurs, the masters of horror in my book,
Yeah.
And I like how he's going around now and he's like, he's performing the scores for his movies on stage with a keyboard and stuff.
Yeah, right.
he, you know, because he got kind of fed up with the movie business and all the politics that goes on and stuff. And I respect the guy for that, but I still wish he was out there making movies.
Yeah, he's really super cool too. Because when we were in Philadelphia, naturally there was a line going out the door of people who wanted to meet him, and the place was it went to a certain time. I think like 5 o'clock, and then they were going to close the doors. And there was still a huge line, and Carpenter just told everybody, "Hey, don't worry, I'm going to stick around until everybody's finished." You know? Yeah.
That's cool.
I don't know how long he was there.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool because a lot of people won't do that. You know, they'll just escape out the door with their entourage or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Bicentennial Men.
That one, boy, it's weird. I'm having a hard time remembering, but the only thing I remember is being on some scaffolding in the inside of the cathedral scene, but there was some other stuff, some driving stuff, but I can't quite recall that one. Sometimes they get kind of blended, you know, of the movie, like Bicentennial Man, the movie Jade, Copycat, and things like that. They kind of morph into one film in my brain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they all kind of happened at the same time, and all of them were shot in the city. So I just kind of remember, you know, going from one location to another, and not really, almost forgetting which show I'm working on.
Yeah. I know certain people, when they have a huge resume and stuff, they forget what stuff, you know, was what.
Yeah.
Do you remember, though, if you had any interaction with Robin Williams?
Just briefly. In the, it's funny. The most I had to do with Robin Williams was when I worked on Willow, because I doubled Rick Overton, and my buddy Rocky doubled Kevin Pollak. And so...
that's right. I forgot they were in that.
Yeah. One day, Robin Williams and Michael Pritchard dropped by the set, you know, to visit Overton and Kevin Pollak.
Mm-hmm.
And so they, you know, they talked and we joked around and everything. And then Michael Pritchard was going to be doing a set at some club in San Francisco. And so both Kevin Pollak and Rick Overton said, "Oh, hey, I'll go up. You want me to do a few minutes, do a bit?" And so Pritchard said, "Yeah." And then Robin Williams said, "Well, you know, I'll go too." And that happened to be our last day of filming on Willow. And so we decided to make that our wrap party, and we all went to go see them.
Nice.
Yeah, and it was weird. It's one of those things where you swear you're all laughed out. You know, I don't have any more in me, you know, and then the next guy would come up and we would all be cracking up all over again. It was an amazing evening.
Yeah, being a part of the San Francisco comedy scene, you know, I know Michael and Rick, and they're great guys.
Yeah.
So in general, have you been seriously injured on sets?
I've been really fortunate. Only bone that I've broken was I broke a river tooth on one occasion, but I have separated both my shoulders and both my collarbones. But other than that, I've never really had any serious injuries. You know, you get banged up, and sometimes you're going to do a stunt, and you go, "Okay, this one's going to hurt." You know, sometimes you know you're going to do something and it's just going to hurt. You know, you won't get injured, but you're going to feel this one. But I've been really fortunate. I haven't had any stunts go badly to where I actually got injured.
Oh, that's
and
good.
I've done, I don't know, 50 body burns or something like that, and numerous fight scenes and a lot of driving. I ended up becoming kind of known as a driver, and so I usually was in the car involved in the chase scene and driving the car that wasn't supposed to be wrecked. Sometimes I, kind of wish I could have been, would get the opportunity to crash a car here and there after a while, but I'll take the other job,
Yeah. So are you retired, or do you still do stunts?
I'm still working. Matter of fact, a couple of, I think it was last year, I ended up doing the longest stair fall that I'd ever done. It was 3 landings and 40 stairs. And, kind of looking at it, and I did it with another stunt gal who was in her 50s, and we were both talking, and she was thinking, she said, when I was going to do this, I was wondering, am I getting too old to be falling downstairs, But then after we did it, at the end of the day, we both decided, I still got this,
That's very commendable, I have to say, because I've interviewed a lot of men and women who worked in stunts, and some of them stopped at 40, some of them stopped at 50, depending on what the circumstance is, but if someone can do it, longer than that, I admire them greatly.
Yeah. It's, now I'm at the point to where I pick and choose what I'm going to do, especially since I've done a lot of stunt coordinating work, before when I was first starting out. When they needed somebody to get hit by a car, I'd be the first one to go, I'll do it. Of course, now you go, oh, good, yeah, he'll do it.
Yeah. And you occasionally take part in Killer Klowns reunions?
Yeah. It's always nice to get together with them. Get together with Grant and Suzanne and Herod. We always hang out when they have something like that going on, and then seeing the Kyotos again. I know they're still trying to get another Killer Klowns, and we're all amazed that they're having such a hard time getting it going, with the fan base already. But it'll happen at some point, and if it does, I hope I get a chance to be involved again.
Yeah, I see the Kyoto brothers every year at Monsterpalooza in Pasadena, and I saw Grant and Suzanne at Sister Creature Con last October in Sacramento, and got a picture with them, which was pretty cool and stuff. I did see that there was a screening that all you guys got to do last year.
Right, yeah. The one where John did the music live, that one?
Yeah, I think it was that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't able to make that. I was working out of town at the time.
Yeah, when I got into the convention scene late in the game, I was like, really? Killer Klowns is being represented at horror conventions? That's so strange, but so cool at the same time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's just insane. Do you have any upcoming movies or convention appearances?
Not at this point. There is a film that's going to be happening that I'm not allowed to talk about.
Right.
But right now, I ended up. I still work. I ended up falling into a weird niche of driving in auto shows. Driving the cars out on stage, onto the turntables, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So those are always fun because a lot of times they need multiple drivers. So I end up just working with the same people I've been working with for the past 40 years. We're all friends. We all like to hang out, and so we get to travel all over the country, doing shows and hanging out,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the internet has really enabled all this to happen because, 30 years ago, the convention scene was just so, dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Mike, it's fun going to the conventions and meeting different people, and it's fun to talk about the show with people who are enthusiastic about it, because everybody kind of wants the inside scoop, things like that. It's a lot of fun. You get to meet a lot of characters too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But it's actually one of the few places I go to that I actually feel like I belong to because I'm such a movie buff,
Right. Yeah.
But I do hope
and it's nice meeting other people because, like, I worked on The Rock with Tony Todd.
Right.
And he's at the conventions all the time, so it's always nice to catch up with him and everything. Yeah.
Oh, Tony just followed me on Twitter, and I couldn't believe it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and then he was scheduled to be at Son of Monsterpalooza a couple weeks ago when I was there, but then he wasn't doing a signing after his panel, so I didn't get to go say, "Hey, thanks for following me on Twitter."
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah.
But I do hope I get to meet you at a convention eventually, Mike, and I thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, no worries. My pleasure.
Yes, and I'm glad you're still out there slugging away and stuff, and hope you get to retire on your own terms when you're ready.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Well, you have yourself a great day, sir.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
All right, talk to you. Bye.
Well, there you have it. Mike Martinez. Ain't he a cool dude? Man, I love hearing those stories about people who keep going and going and going, just like the Energizer Bunny, People who keep going, that's just fucking awesome. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, add me as a friend on Facebook, join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all the time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past, because the present sucks. Later, dudes.